Please, Father, you must reconsider. It is not too late.
It is useless. We are ruined.
Carl Jung spent 60 years studying the human mind. Not in laboratories, not in academic settings removed from the reality of human pain. In the consulting room, the most private, most unguarded, most honest space available to a human being, where people come when the version of themselves they have been showing the world has finally stopped holding together. Over those 60 years, listening to thousands of lives from the inside, he identified 6 specific patterns, 6 things that, when left uncorrected, when denied or ignored or simply never seen, do not just cause suffering. They quietly, systematically, and completely dismantle a human being from the inside. Not dramatically, not all at once. The way a foundation cracks over years, rather than collapsing in a single moment. Slowly, invisibly, until one day the whole structure is compromised, and the person standing inside it cannot understand why everything feels so unstable when from the outside it all looks perfectly fine. Most people are doing at least 3 of these right now. Some are doing all 6. Without any name for what is happening, without any understanding of the specific mechanisms producing the exhaustion, the emptiness, the quiet sense that something is fundamentally wrong. These are Jung's 6 warnings, decoded completely, applied to your actual life, given to you with the precision that turns understanding into something you can actually use. Warning number 1. Stop confusing your mask with your face. Jung called this identification with the persona. But the word persona is almost too simple for what he actually discovered. So let me give you the complete picture. The persona is not vanity. It is not pretending to be better than you are. It is something far more precise and far more universal. It is the version of yourself that you built, beginning in childhood, refined over years, optimized through thousands of social interactions, specifically to be received well by the environment around you. The version that knows which parts of you are safe to bring forward and which parts to leave at the door. The version that has learned, through the accumulated experience of being either accepted or withdrawn from, exactly what shape to take to produce the response you need. Every human being has one. It is not the problem. The problem is this. Wear it long enough and it stops feeling like a mask. It starts feeling like a face. And the moment it starts feeling like a face, you have lost access to the most important question you could ask yourself. Who is the person wearing this? Jung was precise about the cost. He wrote, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself as well as others think one is." Think about what that means fully. The version of you that the world knows, the version that has been seen in every room, praised, relied upon, built into a reputation, is not you. It is the optimized version, the managed version. And a person who lives entirely inside it achieves something extraordinary and devastating simultaneously. They succeed at being someone they never chose to be. Here is what this looks like in your actual life. You are in a conversation that requires you to be fine. You are fine. You perform fine with complete conviction. And beneath the fine, something real is happening, something important, something you need. And it goes unexpressed because fine is what the moment requires. That is the persona operating. In one conversation, appropriate. In every conversation, in every room, in every significant relationship your entire life, what you end up with is a life that functions perfectly and belongs to no one. Jung did not say to destroy the persona. He said to know it is a mask. to be able to put it on when the situation requires it, and to remove it when you are with yourself or with people who deserve the real version. The tragedy is not that the mask exists. The tragedy is when you forget you are wearing it. Tonight, ask yourself this: what am I feeling right now that I have not expressed to anyone? Not because the expression would be wrong, because the room did not seem to have space for it. That unexpressed reality, whatever it is the person beneath the mask asking to be acknowledged. Acknowledge it, even if only to yourself. That acknowledgement is where everything real begins. Warning number 2. Stop pretending your darkness does not exist. Of all of Jung's discoveries, the shadow has been the most misunderstood and the most watered down. So let me give it to you in its full, uncomfortable precision. Your shadow is not simply your bad qualities. It is not just the anger, the jealousy, the impulses you are ashamed of. Jung's shadow is broader and more devastating than that. It is everything that was rejected, everything that was denied, everything that was told, explicitly or implicitly, by parents, by teachers, by every environment you occupied. But it was too much, too dark, too weak, too wrong, too real for the room you were in. This includes what you would call negative: the rage, the grief, the raw need, the hunger. But it also, and this is the part that stops people cold, includes things that are genuinely valuable. The ambition that was called selfishness, the sensitivity that was called weakness, the wildness that was called dangerous, the creativity that was called impractical, the anger that was legitimate but was punished out of existence. Every quality that went underground for any reason lives in the shadow, waiting. And here is what makes this so critical. The shadow does not weaken in the dark. It strengthens. The more thoroughly you deny it, the more autonomous it becomes. The more force it accumulates behind the door you are working so hard to keep shut. And then it comes out sideways. Not in ways you choose, in your worst reactions. The ones that arrive with an intensity that frightens you and that you cannot fully explain. In the relationship patterns that destroy precisely the things you most want to protect. In the people who produce in you an irrational, specific, charged rage that tells you, if you are paying honest attention, that you are seeing something in them you have refused to acknowledge in yourself. Jung called this projection. The unconscious transfer of your unacknowledged shadow material onto others. The qualities you cannot accept in yourself, you perceive in others with a charge and an intensity that belongs to you, not to them. Every time you feel an outsized, disproportionate reaction to someone else, ask yourself honestly, what quality in them am I refusing to own in myself? He said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The work is not to become purely light. The work is to stop pretending the darkness is not part of you. Because until you do, it will run your life from the room you locked it in. Here is the practice. Think of someone who consistently, irrationally irritates you. Someone who produces a reaction that feels too large for what they actually did. Now ask yourself, not to be fair to them, but to be honest with yourself. What quality in that person are you most responding to? And when did you learn that quality was not acceptable in you? That answer is a door into your shadow. Not a comfortable door, the most important one you will ever open. Warning number 3. Stop living on someone else's map. Jung was ferocious about this. Not against wisdom, not against teachers, not against the accumulated understanding of those who came before.
but against something specific and devastating. The moment when external guidance replaces internal experience. When the borrowed map becomes more real to you than the actual territory you are standing in. When you follow a teacher, an ideology, a tradition, a philosophy, and it resonates, something valuable happens. You receive a framework, a language for experience you could not previously articulate, a sense of orientation in a landscape that had felt chaotic. This is real and useful. The problem arrives when the framework stops being a tool you use and becomes a prison you live in. When new experiences must be filtered through the existing ideology rather than encountered directly. When the teacher's voice becomes so internalized that you can no longer distinguish it from your own. When you know what everything means before you have actually experienced it, because the map told you what it would mean. Joseph Campbell, who studied Jung deeply, expressed this with precision. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. Your genuine path, the one that belongs to your specific life, your specific experience, your specific encounter with reality, should not be entirely clear. It should be uncertain and uncomfortable, and sometimes contradictory, because it is being made by a person encountering their own reality for the first time, not following a route someone else traveled through a different territory. Jung discovered through his own life, specifically through his break with Freud, his most important teacher, that the moment of departing from the borrowed map, however terrifying, is the moment of genuine psychological birth. It was when Jung stopped being Freud's heir and started being himself that the most profound work of his life began. The practice for this warning is a single question to carry into every framework, every teaching, every ideology you use to understand your life. Does this match what I actually experience? Not what I think I should experience, not what the framework says I should experience, but what I genuinely encounter when I pay honest attention to my own reality. If yes, use it freely. If not, hold it at arm's length, because your lived experience is not a footnote to someone else's theory. It is the primary source. Warning number 4. Stop overdeveloping one part of yourself while the rest of you atrophies. Jung studied what he called psychological types, the different functions of human consciousness. 4 of them: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Every person has natural tendencies towards certain functions. Every person also has a natural tendency to overdevelop those preferred functions until they become the only tool available in every situation. And here is where the damage happens. The person who overdevelops thinking at the expense of feeling becomes extraordinarily capable of analysis, logic, precise reasoning, and completely unable to navigate the emotional reality of their own intimate relationships. They can explain everything. They cannot feel their way through anything. And they wonder why the most important connections in their life keep developing a kind of thinness they cannot account for intellectually. The person who overdevelops feeling at the expense of thinking lives with enormous emotional depth and enormous vulnerability to being swept into other people's realities without the capacity to step back and evaluate clearly. Their empathy is genuine and profound. Their judgment in critical moments fails them in ways they cannot understand. The person who lives entirely in abstract intellect has cut themselves off from the body and the senses, from the concrete, physical, sensory reality of actually being alive in a specific moment, in a specific body, in a specific world. They think brilliantly and inhabit their life very little. Jung's term for the goal was not excellence. It was wholeness. Not the perfection of any single function, but the integration of all functions into a complete human being who has both rigor and warmth,
both vision and practicality, both analytical power and the capacity to feel the full weight of their own experience. The neglected functions do not disappear, they go underground, and they return, as the shadow returns, in precisely the moments when you most need to be whole. The intellectual who, under the pressure of a critical emotional confrontation, suddenly and completely loses the capacity for the clear thinking that defines them. The feeler who, when precision is demanded, dissolves into emotional chaos. These are not character failures. They are the neglected functions asserting themselves at the worst possible time. Here is the application. Identify your most overdeveloped function, the one you reach for in almost every situation. Then identify its opposite. When did you last deliberately, intentionally use that opposite? When did you last trust a feeling you could not fully explain? When did you last apply precise, logical thinking to an emotional situation you were tempted to simply feel your way through? When did you last let intuition lead when every practical signal said to act immediately? Wholeness is not a destination you arrive at. It is a daily practice of reaching into the parts of yourself you have been leaving behind. Warning number 5. Stop living only on the surface of your own mind. This is the warning that most people in the modern world are failing most completely. And they are failing it while believing they are being productive. The unconscious is not a basement where repressed material sits waiting to cause damage. This is one of the most pervasive misunderstandings of Jungian psychology, and it costs people
enormously. The unconscious is also, and primarily, a source. Possibly the greatest source available to a human being. It is where genuine creativity lives. Not the creativity of effort and technique, but the kind that arrives fully formed in the gap between structured thinking, in the moment between sleep and waking, in the shower, in the walk taken without a destination. The solution that could not be forced, but appeared the moment you stopped forcing. Every human being with any creative output in any field knows this experience. Jung named the mechanism. It is where accumulated wisdom lives. Not the wisdom of what you have been taught, but the organized intelligence of your entire life's experience, structured below the threshold of conscious awareness into patterns of understanding that your conscious mind cannot replicate. The knowing that arrives as a felt sense before the reasoning catches up. The gut feeling that turns out to be correct. These are not mystical. They are the unconscious processing information that the conscious mind has not yet integrated. And it is where renewal lives. The capacity to be genuinely changed by experience, rather than simply to process it from within your existing frameworks. The capacity to encounter something that undoes you. A loss, a failure, an unexpected love. And to be reconstituted on the other side of it as something larger than what you were before. Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And what he meant by souls was precisely this: the complete interior life, not just the managed surface that has been approved for presentation. The unconscious communicates in specific languages. Dreams are the most direct, not to be interpreted literally, but to be engaged with as expressions of what is currently being processed below conscious awareness. Irrational emotional charges, the specific feelings that arrive without obvious cause, the images that return unbidden, the themes that recur in moments of stillness, are messages from below the surface. Synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences that Jung documented extensively, are moments when the unconscious and the external world speak the same language simultaneously. When you live entirely on the surface, in the structured, rational, managed territory of conscious awareness, you cut yourself off from the deepest source of renewal available to you. And Jung was specific about the consequences. The unconscious, ignored, escalates. First, through dreams that become more disturbing and more insistent. Then through events in the external life that seem to mirror precisely what is unaddressed internally. Then, if all of that fails, through the body. Through the chronic symptoms and the exhaustion and the illnesses that do not respond fully to purely physical treatment, because they are not purely physical in origin. The practice here is simple and uncomfortable for those who live primarily in their heads. 10 minutes a day, simply 10 minutes, in genuine dialogue with your own interior. Not solving, not producing, not consuming. Attending. Write what comes without editing it. What keeps returning to your attention that you have not yet looked at directly? What are you feeling that you have not yet given a name? What did you dream that you dismissed before it could tell you what it was trying to say? The answers will not always be comfortable. They will almost always be necessary. Warning number 6. Stop moving through a life that means nothing to you. Jung said it with a directness that I believe is one of the most important sentences written about the human condition in the last century. He said, "The lack of meaning in life is a soul sickness, whose full extent and import our age has not yet begun to comprehend." Soul sickness, not psychological disorder, not mood disturbance. Soul sickness. The specific suffering of a person whose life, however full of activity, however externally impressive, however objectively successful, has no center, no direction that is genuinely theirs, no reason deep enough to make the difficulty of being alive feel worthwhile. Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz and emerged with one of the most penetrating understandings of human endurance ever articulated, arrived at the same place from a completely different direction. He wrote that the deepest human motivation is not pleasure, not power, but meaning. A person can endure almost any suffering if they have a reason that is genuinely theirs, and a person can be destroyed, quietly, gradually, invisibly, by comfort and safety and external success, if none of it connects to anything that genuinely matters to them. This is the existential vacuum, the specific hollowness of going through the motions, of building without direction, of achieving without arrival. And here is what makes it so dangerous in the modern world specifically. It is entirely possible to fill a life so completely with activity, stimulus, productivity, and social connection that the vacuum is never quiet enough to be felt directly. And when it is finally quiet, in the gap between sleeping and waking, in the specific silence after an accomplishment that should have landed and did not, it arrives with the specific, undeniable weight of something that has been accumulating for a very long time. Meaning is not what you were told should matter. It is not the achievement that produces external recognition or the status that makes other people believe you are living correctly. Those things can coexist with meaning, but they are not meaning itself. Meaning is what remains when you remove the recognition. What you would do, pursue, build, or care about, even if no one ever acknowledged it. The thing that makes you feel, in the middle of the doing rather than in the reflection afterward, like you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Jung found his meaning through his work, through the lifelong, relentless inquiry into the architecture of the human psyche. But he was equally clear that meaning is entirely individual. What constitutes a meaningful life for one person bears no necessary resemblance to what constitutes it for another. The work is not to find the right answer. The work is to find your answer. The answer that is genuinely yours, not borrowed,
not inherited, not performed for approval, and to orient your life around it with the seriousness it deserves. The question I want to leave you with for this final warning is one to sit with tonight, not rush to answer, not force into a framework. Simply hold it with genuine openness and let whatever arrives, arrive. What would you do, care about, build, or pursue, even if no one ever rewarded you for it? What produces in you, not after the fact, not in the reflection on what you accomplished, but in the middle of the doing, the specific, unmistakable feeling of being genuinely, completely, rightfully present? Whatever comes when you ask that question honestly is not an assignment. It is a coordinate, the precise location of meaning in a life that may have been built too far from it for too long. 6 warnings from a man who spent 60 years inside the hidden architecture of the human experience. Stop confusing your mask with your face. Stop pretending your darkness does not exist. Stop living on someone else's map. Stop overdeveloping one part of yourself while the rest of you atrophies. Stop living only on the surface of your own mind. And stop moving through a life that has no center that is genuinely yours. None of these is a single evening correction. Jung understood that. His entire life's work is the map of a lifelong journey toward what he called individuation, the process of becoming, for the first time and completely, the specific, whole, unrepeatable person that you actually are. Not the persona, not the shadow's product, not the imitation or the partial or the surface-dwelling version. The whole person. The one who has done the uncomfortable work of meeting themselves honestly, integrating what they found, and building a life from the inside out rather than from the outside in. That work is not comfortable. Jung never said it would be. He said something else. He said it is the only work that is worth doing. You have just been given his 6 warnings. The question is what you are going to do with them. Comment below with the number of the warning that landed hardest for you right now. Not the one you think you should pick, the one that actually, honestly, uncomfortably applies. I read every single one. And if what you just heard opened something in you that one video cannot close, what comes next goes deeper. Because these 6 warnings are only the beginning. What Jung recommended, the specific practices, the frameworks, the actual work of individuation, is where the real
Transformation lives. And that is exactly where we are going. If you want me to make that video, let me know in the comments section below. Like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on it.